What kind of a show are you guys putting on here today?
You're not interested in art?
No.
Now look, we're going to do this thing. We're going to have a conversation.
Hey, Film Spotters, Adam and Josh here. We will have a full show coming Friday as usual, including a review of the drama. We haven't taped that show yet, Josh, and I have no reason to suspect this. Will there be any drama on that show between us?
I have an instinct that you liked this movie, Adam.
Oh.
Again, I'm not basing this on any evidence. Just something tells me you did.
You know what I'm into at the movies.
And so I think we might have some drama. I'll say that.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And you know what? I did have the same feeling about you, opposite of what you felt about me. So
at this point,
interesting
it tends
how
to
that
happen.
Works.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we will discuss that, and we will also share 40s Madness Sweet 16 results, including, yes, I did call it the tourney's first upset. We'll also give you the Elite 8 matchups. Today, though, we're going to take care of some official business. We're going to induct a couple of films into the Filmspotting Pantheon, our eclectic movie Hall of Fame. It's our second year of doing it in this official fashion. We do have some other business to take care of first, and that is we have to share the lineup, Josh, for our Filmspotting Marathon. We do one of these a year at this point. We have so much other programming and content that we need to fit in, but this is a process where we get on with the Filmspotting Advisory Board. You bring topics to the table, I bring topics, Sam brings topics, our producer, and then we get feedback from the FAB, we whittle it down, and then the family gets to weigh in. And their votes spoke the loudest. They told us what topic they thought our marathon should be. And it was a topic that you proposed.
Dissident cinema. That's where we're going this year. And it's a little different from previous marathons. Yeah, as came up among some of those conversations. Hopefully, to folks just hearing about this for the first time, it's relatively self-evident by that title, Dissident Cinema. We're basically going to look at acclaimed films that push back against state and political abuses of power. And it's funny, Adam, maybe sad funny, but this topic has come up as you detailed that process here and there as we were considering options, maybe a year now, off and on, right? And every time it just keeps getting more timely, I feel like. And I think if put it in this perspective, I think when we did put the options up for a vote to the Filmspotting Advisory Board, that might have been before the United States launched this irrational war on Iran, which is its own, to my mind, abuse of power. So we are unfortunately continually trying to wrap our minds around this in real time, in real life. And so I do think part of my thinking behind this proposal was that it may be helpful to look at movies from the past that have addressed such moments in history, and cinephiles particularly, maybe will have an avenue then for processing what we are experiencing. And I also think it might be helpful to do that from a non-American vantage point. And where we did land on the titles, Adam, which this is probably the first time we're actually revealing the titles, I think we're exclusively looking at films from a non-US point of view.
Well, with the exception maybe of the first one. Right, where we are,
I suppose, British filmmaker, but yes,
depending how you want to look at it. But otherwise, you are exactly right. And if you're new to the show, we have been doing Filmspotting Marathons since the very early days. And like all of the best aspects of Filmspotting, it wasn't necessarily planned. It wasn't planned at all. It just organically came out of doing the show and came out of feedback from listeners. In this case, the feedback was, why aren't you guys smarter? Why don't you know more movies? You know, we would do these top 5 lists and people would say, I can't believe you left this off. I can't believe you left this off. And we still get that feedback from time to time. And this was in the early days, myself and Sam, of course, as the co-host. And what we were especially noticing is that more than anything, we just didn't know Westerns. And I don't want to speak for Sam at this point, but it was, my dad watched Westerns, of course. That was the generation that grew up on these John Wayne films in particular. And maybe as an act of rebellion, I did not care about these Westerns. And I wasn't far enough along in my cinephile journey, apparently, to care about Westerns. Now, I had to watch Stagecoach as a film student, and I could appreciate it on that level, but I wasn't diving in. I wasn't going back in and watching these Westerns. So we said, we really need to fill in these blind spots. Let's make it a segment. Let's force ourselves. Let's make it a recurring segment. The first ever marathon was a Western a week marathon. For 8 weeks, we did a different Western, and Stagecoach was part of it, even though I had seen it, but the other 7 were Westerns I hadn't seen. So over time, we have done these limited series devoted to, it might be directors, it might be genres, it might be regions of world cinema, or it might be these other themes like we have here. And Dissident Cinema is going to be our 52nd marathon. And so maybe we don't get as many emails anymore saying, why don't you guys have better lists? Why aren't you smarter? Because we have filled in over 20 years some of these blind spots, and we are a little more educated, we hope anyway.
Well, and there always will be blind spots, but to your point, I think there's one title, maybe 2 in this marathon that I think you've seen, because you
2 I've seen,
have been able to catch them before. So as we get further along doing these marathons, sometimes we do have a few revisits for one or both of us, but generally they are legit blind spots. And that's the case for most of these here for both of us.
It is. And as we have talked about, maybe with the FAB and certainly behind the scenes here, myself, you, and Sam, at some point, you almost have to consider that if you haven't seen them in over 20 years or maybe over 25 years, and that is the case for me with these first 2 are the ones I've seen, but I saw them as a film student. And if it's been that long, then they might as well be blind spots. What's the point? I not only haven't seen them in that long, but I haven't written about them critically. I haven't talked about them critically. So we might as well watch them again. We might as well dive in. So we do have, we'll say this, we had 6 films planned. We did just discover last night, or Sam just discovered last night, that the 6th film doesn't appear to be available anywhere. Not online anywhere. And so maybe when we get there, Josh, we can have this on-air production meeting, whether or not we want to just sort of TBD it and decide later whether or not we want to add a 6th movie. That's option A. Option B would be whether or not we want to leave it open for listeners to suggest a 6th topic, a 6th film, which we're always open to, and that's fun. Or we might just decide to keep it at 5 movies, and there's 2 good reasons for that. One is we are starting this marathon very late, a little bit later than we normally would. We'd usually be done kind of by the end of May as we're getting into summer movies. The other reason is, and I'm not going to spoil it yet, but I'm looking at what is the 5th movie in this marathon, and it's 4 hours and 11 minutes long.
This is true. Yeah.
So
it's going to be a lot to tackle. So
okay, so you can go ahead and do the honors. The first movie, we'll just alternate here. What's the first film in our Dissident Cinema Marathon?
Yeah, and we're going to list these chronologically. So order of release, and we're beginning our journey in 1940 with Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator. As you said, Adam, one you saw a while back. This is the perfect excuse for me to finally see The Great Dictator, released as fascism was consolidating power across Europe, openly confronts authoritarianism. And also, interestingly, I'm curious about this element as well, Chaplin's first fully sound film. So experiencing that, placing it within his filmography, I think is going to be part of the learning curve for me, especially with The Great Dictator. Now, it was a 1941 Best Picture nominee. Chaplin was nominated for Best Actor here. And if we want to tie this to one of our other projects that we have going on, and one of the reasons we don't do as many marathons, quite frankly, as we used to, is we have fun things like Filmspotting Madness taking place every year. Right now, we are in the midst of the Best of the 1940s Madness tournament. The Great Dictator lost in the second round to The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, but it's going to get a win by being included in our marathon.
There you go. And we and listeners are going to get a win as we continue this marathon, because number 2 1945, Roberto Rossellini, an Italian cinema class I took way back when. Rome, Open City, about a Roman resistance leader pursued by the Nazis. It was shot in post-war Rome. It was shot amid real devastation, and it was Italy's first major film produced after the war. And it was the winner of the Palme d'Or at the 1946 Cannes Film Festival. And there was one film, maybe a Sessione, that is usually looked at as the first Italian neorealism film, but this is the one because of the acclaim it got. In particular, it's the one, Josh, that is usually looked to as the one that launched Italian neorealism globally. Now, none of that helped it at all, unfortunately, in the first round of 40s Madness, as it did lose to The Grapes of Wrath. But it is being revived here for our marathon.
And this is, for me, the biggest blind spot among all the titles we're tackling. So very much looking forward to seeing Rome, Open City. All right, next up, a film from 1946. And honestly, Adam, a movie from Akira Kurosawa that I was vaguely, at best, familiar with before we started doing the research for this. It is called No Regrets for Our Youth. And Kurosawa made this obviously in the immediate aftermath of wartime Japan. It is about a young woman's pre- and post-war political awakening. Here is a non-political reason I'm extremely excited about this. The movie stars Setsuko Hara, who I'm familiar with from Ozu's Tokyo Story and Late Spring. She was also in Tokyo Twilight. So that is going to be a real treat to see her on screen again in No Regrets for Our Youth. This is available via Criterion Channel if you're a subscriber there. Also is free with ads on places like Plex and Fossum.tv. I haven't explored Fossum.tv yet, Adam, but if you want to check that out, you can find No Regrets for Our Youth there as well.
Yeah, and this one will be interesting to check out because we've talked about a few Kurosawa films recently, mainly for Filmspotting family members as bonus content, Drunken Angel, Stray Dog. And what we've talked about is the political nature of those movies, ultimately, the cultural commentary that is going on within these films that otherwise might be or might seem like gangster pictures, right? And this movie is his most overtly political. That is how everyone refers to it. And so I want to see that dichotomy on screen here, and No Regrets for Our Youth is one I'm eager to see. Number 4, this is one that is long for me been a huge blind spot. 1969, Z from Costa Gavras. This is a fictionalized account of the 1963 assassination of a Greek political figure and then the cover-up by the fascist government. The grand jury at Cannes gave it the top prize there. It won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. Pauline Kael said, "Remember when the movie ads used to say it will knock you out of your seat? Well, Z damn near does." So Josh, I guess, get your seatbelt out while you're sitting on your couch.
Yeah.
And it's available on the Criterion Channel, but also HBO Max and other VOD platforms. That should be good.
I love a good Pauline Kael quote. We don't do that enough here on the show.
No, we don't.
So
you're right.
Good to see that. All right, here's the big one in terms of running time, at least. It is Marcel Ophuls from 1969, The Sorrow and the Pity. So a documentary here, one that chronicles life in France under Nazi occupation. It's a testimony that is known to reveal moral ambiguity, particularly more than any sort of heroic consensus. It was banned, interestingly, from French television for over a decade after its release. So we'll be very eager to dig into the history surrounding that as well as the text of the movie. Yes, 251 minutes. That's 4 hours and 11 minutes. I'm unfamiliar if it's broken up into distinct chapters that might make that a bit more manageable or how we're going to tackle it, but we are going to do it. The Sorrow and the Pity. If you want to play along, it looks like it is available VOD on most platforms.
Mm-hmm. the movie that I only ever knew as the punchline in Annie Hall, Alvy, I'm not in the mood for a 4-hour documentary about Nazis. That's how it was first on my radar. Now we are going to watch that 4-hour documentary about Nazis. And yes, I am eager to see it as well, finally. So we may end it there. Josh, I don't know if you have an inclination about what we should do, but we did initially want to end this marathon by jumping ahead to 2000 and talk about The Circle from Jafar Panahi. And Panahi is one of, now I can say, my favorite filmmakers. And I have not seen every one of his films, including The Circle, but I've seen a lot of his films. Many of them, I think 3 of them have made my top 10 lists over the past decade or so. And it fit our thinking here, certainly, because it follows several women over the course of a single day in Tehran, and it's about their kind of intersecting lives through their attempts to escape their various social constraints. And it won the Golden Lion at Venice. It was later, cited as evidence against him by the Iranian government. And Josh, you've said that when we initially when you suggested this topic and we were debating it for the marathon, we had not begun this incursion, but when we were thinking of these film titles, we very much had, and that's why very pointedly we were thinking about an Iranian film. We have discovered that it's not available, as I said, via VOD or streaming, and even if we can get it via our library to watch it, it just feels like if we can't get more listeners involved to watch it, it makes it tough to include in the marathon. So we may just have to discuss this a little bit more behind the scenes, but we'll see.
I have a proposal on that's related to the library, actually, and we can see how it plays out. And if we don't sense a lot of traction on this, as you said, we have a lot of good stuff to get into here already, and maybe we leave it behind. But I will look into the library availability around me, especially when I get back home to the States. I would encourage listeners to do that. Check out your local library. And here's what I would propose is, if it's not there, because this is the last proposed title in our marathon, go ahead and ask your library if they would buy it. And I know this we have so many listeners who are librarians. And so I know this from them. Debbie's a librarian. So I know a little bit about how libraries work. And in some cases, not all, but your library has a budget for purchasing media, and they love getting some direction from the people who actually live in their towns and their villages and use their library. They love to hear you say, hey, I've always wanted to, watch this or read this. You don't have a copy now. Is there any chance you could possibly order one? I mean, if we get enough people to do that and the orders are placed soon enough, I don't know, maybe we can stock the shelves with The Circle in about, a month or so here. If it doesn't work out, again, we've got so many great films,
we have time.
But it's just a good reminder to check your library for any titles like this if you don't immediately find them on streaming. It's a resource we mention a lot on the show, but isn't necessarily top of mind for a lot of people.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be available via Canopy, but I can get it at the University of Iowa library, and that will be how I would check it out. So
there you go.
We do encourage you to do that. I think that's great advice, Josh. And you can look for the Dissident Cinema Marathon to start at the end of April. We'll have more details about that at filmspotting.net/episodes. And of course, we'll have more details about that marathon and all of our marathons at filmspotting.net/marathons, or go to filmspotting.net. There's a link right there at the top of the page.
Since the pyramids, Xanadu is the costliest monument a man has built to himself.
2 films will join the Filmspotting Pantheon today. Josh, I don't feel like we have dressed up enough for this occasion. It should be a more formal one somehow.
I mean, we're getting better at least formalizing it structurally for the show.
Yes.
This used to be quite haphazard.
Yes.
Leading to us forgetting what movies were even in the Pantheon. So at least by doing it in this manner, I feel like we're giving it a little more honor. But at some point, maybe we get together, Adam, and do a live announcement where we dress up a little bit better. Okay.
Yeah, that
We'll get
that would
there.
be good. Though I hate to break it to you, maybe now's not a good time. There are going to be changes coming to the process. But here's the good news.
Of course there
Here-
are. I think we've had the like 6-month lull of
I
like
know.
actually doing what we said. It's high
I know.
time we
No,
upend
actually,
everything.
in all honesty, it doesn't upend it, and it actually totally streamlines it. You'll be on board. It makes it
Okay.
it makes it way easier. It makes it way easier.
I like
So
the sound of that.
We'll get to that later. The Filmspotting Pantheon, currently 57 films from 2001: A Space Odyssey to The Wizard of Oz and everything, including Midnight Run in between. So the brief history lesson is, initially this was all about just the Filmspotting top 5. When the show began, there were 3 titles we knew or thought we knew would come up too often in the Filmspotting top 5s, myself and Sam. So we just set them aside. They were sort of in the forever penalty box, like Citizen Kane and The Godfather. And, of course we revere Citizen Kane, but it's not like realistically Citizen Kane was probably going to come up that often. So the whole thing was folly from the beginning, Josh. Now, The Godfather, that was more realistic, and then there were movies we also love, like All the President's Men and Glengarry Glen Ross. And so those were put in the Pantheon. After that, movies were just kind of added a little bit willy-nilly. And so then last year we said, how do we formalize this process? How do we make it so we stop asking each other questions about what the Pantheon is and how movies get in? How do we make it so listeners stop asking us questions about it? And how do we also turn it into something where we can get some content out of it, generate some new content, some new reviews? And the biggest thing, that Sam brought up is, and he was so right about it, is we just have all these great movies sitting over there that some people, listeners, have said, I'd love to hear you talk about these movies. And actually, by putting them in the Pantheon, we've kind of said, we're never going to talk about these movies. Right. They're never going to come up in a top 5. Could we actually do a project where we force ourselves to talk about these Pantheon movies? And the irony is, stupidly, I was wrong, not surprisingly. I was wrong. I thought, well, what am I going to have to say about, I was going to say Raging Bull, which we haven't talked about yet. What am I going to have to say about Chinatown? What am I really going to have to say about All the President's Men? All these films that are just, I just know they're great. And, I'm just going to say how great they are for 30 minutes or whatever. And then it turns out, of course, we talk about these movies for 50 minutes to 60 minutes. And they're of course, they're so rich. And of course, it's like seeing them again with fresh eyes. And they're some of my favorite conversations we've ever had in the show's history. Right?
Yeah. That's it. And, it's intimidating. Let's be honest. That's part of it too, is to think of some of those titles and realize all of the great writing, all of the great work that's been done thinking about these. What are we going to add? And, we'll let listeners determine how much we actually added. But I think I would agree with you. The act of digging into them in a formal review has been incredibly rewarding and has really justified this as an entire project, at least from our end.
Yeah. So the nomination process the last 2 years has been, and we just wrapped it up this year with our conversation about Meek's Cutoff. We come to the table on a show. We have a nomination segment where you bring 3 movies, I bring 3 movies, Sam brings 3 movies. The structure is simply that each one of us has to pick a movie from a past Filmspotting Marathon. We want to tie it to the show's history. So a Filmspotting Marathon, one has to be a Filmspotting Sacred Cow. So it's just a classic film review. And then there's a wild card. We got to bring something new to the table. Any movie that we want to suggest. And the only catch is it has to be at least 5 years old. So maybe we've reviewed it before, right? It could be like, for example, we could nominate Parasite, even if we've reviewed it before,
right?
But we've never given it that full sort of Sacred Cow in-depth discussion. But we can't talk about a movie. One Battle After Another can't be nominated for the Pantheon now.
That's right.
In 4 years, in 5 years, it could come up potentially. So last year, we nominated those films. We put those together, those 9 films on a ballot. The Filmspotting family members, part of their membership benefits, they get exclusive voting rights. They get to shape the Pantheon. And we had our ballot, Josh, me, you, and Sam. We had the Filmspotting family ballot, and we compare those two. And basically, the top vote getter on each one gets in. Those are the 2 films that get in. If there's overlap, we go to the next one on our list. And in this case, Singin' in the Rain was the top vote getter on each list. And so it became Singin' in the Rain and Sherlock Jr. from Buster Keaton. Those were the two
last year's,
that went
inductees.
in last year. So we then renominated between us 3 films from last year when we did the 9 this year. Agnes Varda's Cleo from 5 to 7, William Wyler's The Best Years of Our Lives, Guillo Pontecorvo's The Battle of Algiers. We then had some new nominees. We had Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon, Kelly Reichardt's Meek's Cutoff, Jonathan Demme's Stop Making Sense, Abbas Kiarostami's Close Up, John Ford's How Green Was My Valley, Barbara Koppel's Harlan County, USA. How about that for a list of 9 candidates for the Pantheon? Can't go wrong.
Love the variety there and love thinking about those conversations we had about some of these and really enjoyed the recent ones. So we talked recently, as you said, about Meek's Cutoff. We took a look at Rashomon for the first time together, believe it or not.
Yes.
And then John Ford's How Green Was My Valley was the other recent conversation we had to put those films in the mix with all the others you mentioned.
And How Green Was My Valley probably would have had to have been the Cinderella here to make it all the way into the Pantheon. Of the 9, you'd agree, and it was your nominee, the longest shot. Unfairly, it seems, we would both say, because we had a great conversation about it, and I loved the movie, unfairly derided because it beat Citizen Kane for Best Picture. And it does turn out that in this ballot, it's definitely not getting into the Pantheon because it did finish last in both our ballot, the critics' ballot, if you will, and in family voting. Picked up the rear.
Not a surprise to me so I was, initially thrilled to see on Letterboxd after we did our review, it popping up here and there, How Green Was My Valley, and some folks even referencing they were watching it because of the Pantheon Project. So loved that, but not all of those reviews were glowing. So I had a sense that this one didn't get a shot. But as you say, I'm just so thrilled that you came to love it as much as I had already. So that was worth it for me, even though it didn't fare well in the voting.
We do have what we think here at Filmspotting is good news to report. We're very happy with how this worked out because we are adding, and the Pantheon needs this, we are adding 2 foreign language / international films to the Pantheon from 2 of our all-time favorite filmmakers who are currently not represented in the Pantheon. The top finisher in the Filmspotting ballot, so this is across me, you, Sam, our ballot, and it had a weighted rank of 1.0, which means that you, me, and Sam all had it at number 1. I think that's fairly decisive, Josh. Officially going into the Pantheon where she belongs, Agnes Varda and Cleo from 5 to 7.
There we go. Sam, especially being the hugest Varda fan, is going to sleep so much
beaming.
better knowing she's represented in the Pantheon. But I love this. This is great.
Yeah. Okay. Now we'll build up the suspense a little here because this is how the family voting shook out, and we can separate it quite nicely into tiers. As I already mentioned, tier 5, all on its own, How Green Was My Valley. Then we had tier 4, these 3 films bunched together, and man, were they bunched together very close. Meek's Cutoff, Harlan County, USA, and Close Up. Those 3 were separated by 0.27 from the first one to the third one, okay, in the weighted rank, right? So it's a ballot. You rank them 1 to 9, and that's how much was separating them. Very close.
Already my mind here is trying to make connections among these. Is there like a austere / realism sensibility that they share that maybe voters just lumped them together? I don't know. I'll try not to psychologize our voters too much.
I am really glad you said that because it allows me to bring in a quick bit of feedback and we don't have to dig into it, but I'd love just your initial thought. We got this email from Damian Cannon who said, "Hi, Adam and Josh. I just wanted to drop you a line about the Pantheon candidates. It's a really interesting project, and I like how you've come up with quite the range of choices. However, I'm wondering if Josh and Sam have a subconscious love for coal mining, since Josh put forward How Green Was My Valley while Sam came up with Harlan County, USA. The funny thing is that you could barely have two more polar opposite films. On one hand, How Green Was My Valley romanticizes the lives of those Welsh miners with their male voice choirs and beautiful verdant hills, while in Harlan you have grinding poverty, open warfare, and the bleakness of being exploited by a local monopoly employer. And yet they both show the weary struggle of striking, of scab workers, and the cost of fighting for basic human rights. Tough choice then, especially as a blend of both would be outstanding, while separately they have issues. Harlan County suffers by not having someone at the center who you can root for, while How Green Was My Valley skates over the institutional brutality of coal mining. Still great choices though, which I would likely never have watched without Filmspotting to nudge me along, so big thanks for that.
There you go. Damien was way ahead of me on, on making some of those connections. I'm not going to argue with him. Damien came to the London meetup last December. Smart guy. So yeah, kudos for the work done there.
Yeah. And I think ultimately, I mean, here we could get into it and really parse it, and we're not going to. I think he probably, if you can do this, broadly gets at the nuance correctly there. That yes, How Green Was My Valley obviously much more romanticizes the life of a coal miner than Harlan County, USA does, but both speak to the brutality of it and the exploitation of it in their own way, right?
Yeah, very different styles, okay. Yeah.
So in tier 3, we have All Alone in the Middle, Stop Making Sense, the Jonathan Demme Talking Heads documentary. Now here's where it gets really interesting. These were all very close, not only to each other, but to the number 1 spot. In that tier 2, The Best Years of Our Lives, The Battle of Algiers, and Cleo from 5 to 7. So the listeners were not far from us, Josh, in wanting to anoint Cleo as well. They just also had Algiers and The Best Years of Our Lives in the mix. From the first one of those to the third one, there was only 0.29 separating them, okay, in the weighted rank. 0.29. So these are all just in the weighted rank of 3 overall, 3 out of 9. And then there's only 0.31 separating number 2 from the number 1 choice. If you're paying close attention, you know that the title I haven't mentioned, the one that is going into the Pantheon, Akira Kurosawa, congratulations. What an honor for you. You are going into the Filmspotting Pantheon. Rashomon is the film going into the Pantheon.
You are finally officially recognized as one of cinema's all-time greats. Yes, with that induction. And seriously, like probably the heavyweight title among all of those, I think it's fair to say. So I like these two as a pair, Adam, our inductees 2026, Cleo from 5 to 7 and Rashomon, because Cleo is, although very well known and loved and regarded, you spoke to it with the Varda connection. I feel like this is a Filmspotting particular pick. We did a Varda marathon. Cleo wasn't a part of that just because you and I had seen it previously, but just really came to fall in love with her as a filmmaker. And she's come up so often over the years. So to have Cleo in there makes sense for Filmspotting. And Rashomon is just one of those, like, what are we doing here with this Pantheon if something like Rashomon isn't in it? So I think we covered 2 good bases here. We still made it kind of a personal sort of pick, and also we're legitimizing the project with something like Rashomon.
And even though we did leave Cleo out of that marathon, we did talk about Cleo and loved it, raved about that film. If you would like to hear that conversation and understand why we ultimately do see it as Pantheon worthy, you can find that in the Filmspotting archive. If you're a Filmspotting family member, that was a wild card nominee last year as part of this Pantheon project. And now Cleo from 5 to 7 is in the Pantheon. The perks and privileges of being a Pantheon movie, you're no longer eligible for Filmspotting top 5s.
And you and I have to remember that when we make our top 5 lists, or, you know, just take the step of going to the website and looking at the Pantheon page.
Actually looking at it.
For some reason, I rarely do, but yeah, we got to let these sink in now. They're ineligible moving forward.
There you go. The Pantheon project continues with reviews of current Pantheon titles celebrating anniversaries this year. We do intend to get to Citizen Kane. Yes. Talk about the granddaddies of them all. Citizen Kane turning 85. Now, Fargo, we had on the calendar earlier to correspond with its actual release date and have had to push it back. We're hoping to get to it. That turns 30 this year. The Tree of Life, one of our younger Pantheon Project reviews at 15 years. And then David Lynch has 2 movies in the Pantheon that have anniversaries this year, Blue Velvet at 40 and Mulholland Drive at 25. So those are 5 movies that are all penciled into the schedule this year that you can look forward to. More about the Pantheon at filmspotting.net/Pantheon. And I'll just tell you this real quick. The quick proposal to augment the marathon, or the process to the Pantheon, I should say, is to keep it 9 movies and to keep it where we each come in with one wild card new title, and we each come in with one classic film title from Filmspotting history. It just can be either a marathon or a sacred cow, which was getting a little tricky anyway, right?
Yeah,
the only difference is that it's a 3x3x3 approach, where the other third set of 3 movies is we do have 3 movies that hold over from the previous year's ballot. Essentially the 3 top vote getters that feel like the 3 most urgent, the 3 most popular films that sort of deserve to be held over, right? And I feel like with a couple of the titles in particular that you heard that were very high in the voting, and were certainly high on both our list and the Filmspotting family list, there's really no reason why 1 or 2 of those titles shouldn't for sure be held over onto the ballot next year and considered.
Yeah, roll them over. Wrinkle question, you don't have to answer if this hasn't been discussed, but do they have a number of times where
that's part
they
of it.
Can roll over and then are no longer eligible at all?
Yes. Well, what we've decided is, or what the thought is we're calling it the soft sabbatical, which is to ensure that it doesn't get too boring of hearing the same ones for 10 years potentially or whatever, is that after 3 years of being held over, if it doesn't get voted in, it does have to automatically come out, but it's not banned forever. If a host wants to renominate it, they can.
After a sabbatical. Okay.
After a year. Now maybe the host never will, but they can.
Right.
It's not banned forever. Yeah.
Makes sense.
So I think we've got it figured out. I think it will work. I think this process is working moving forward. Obviously, the 4 films that we've nominated, in terms of what we wanted to achieve, getting great conversations. Well, we're having fun with the conversations. Again, the listeners can decide, but having really fun conversations about 6 movies that we haven't talked about in depth, the 2 of us before, over the past 2 years, and then getting 4 exciting films into the Pantheon over the past 2 years. It's checked those boxes.
Yeah, it's a great start with this mix of 4 so far. Absolutely.
Reminder, more about the Pantheon at filmspotting.net/Pantheon. And coming Friday, our review of the drama and 40s Madness Elite 8.
Filmspotting is independently produced and listener supported. You can support the show by joining the Filmspotting family at filmspottingfamily.com. You can listen early and ad-free. You'll also get monthly bonus episodes, a weekly newsletter, and access to the entire show archive. Filmspotting is produced by Golden Joe Dassault and Sam Van Halgren. Without Sam and Golden Joe, this show wouldn't go. Our production assistant is Sophie Kempenaar. Special thanks to everyone at WBEZ Chicago. More information is available at wbez.org. For Filmspotting, I'm Josh Larson.
And I'm Adam Kempenaar. Thanks for listening.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.